Hi there, I have seen so many dismal software engineers that I thought I would make a video on how to be a great software engineer. With these tips you would be in command of your software careers and companies would be looking to hire you for top salaries. These tips come from the experience of being in the software field for over 20 years and working for the top Silicon Valley companies. So follow these tips and do not make naive mistakes. People come from different backgrounds and how they react to the environment around them has a great effect on their overall well-being. First of all, when you see people around you being slackers, you want to stay away from them. Work for the best companies and being surrounded with high-caliber people have a great impact on your future. So without further ado, let us begin. So the tip number 1 is that you should know your computer architecture fundamentals well. Knowing the syntax of a language is easy. Anyone can do that. But you should know how the CPU works. You should know your register set. Nowadays ARM is becoming the more popular CPU architecture and the x86 is fading away. Whichever CPU you dive into, know it well. You should know how the stack works. Whether it is 32-bit or 64-bit CPU. That means what is size of the registers in the architecture. How is the address space laid out? You should know the exception mechanism and privilege levels. For example, the interviewers may ask you at what level hypervisor runs. On ARM architecture we have 4 privilege levels. How does DMA work? What is memory hierarchy? How does DMA interact with CPU caches? Cache invalidation and cache snooping are the terms you should be familiar with. You should know spin locks and the meaning of the term atomic instruction. Interviewers may also want to know if you understand how multiprocessing works in a SMP environment. What are the advantages of a RISC architectures over CISC architecture? ARM is a RISC machine. RISC means reduced instruction set computer. Unaligned memory references can cause problems on some RISC architectures. What is the difference between interrupts versus polling? Address translation between virtual address space and physical address should be a familiar term for you. What are page tables? How does a C program cause segmentation violation? How does an operating system let user-level code OS services? This is usually done by the means of a trap instruction. Tip number 2 is that you should know your data structures and algorithms fundamentals well. That means knowing what is an array. What is a linked list? A linked list can be of 2 kinds. Singly linked lists and doubly linked lists. What is an hash table? How to choose a good hash function. Also the difference between hashing with chaining versus linear probing. You should know sets and graphs as well. One of the important things is to know the space and time complexity of choosing one data structure over the other. Interviewers want to know, can you do things in ON or O1 time and space complexity? ON square is considered a bad algorithm. Even though in my 20-year career I have never had to use graphs to solve a problem, if the interviewer is a sadist he may even ask you questions related to graphs, though getting a question on trees and binary trees is pretty common. BST is an interesting kind of tree and many questions are asked in that area. You may be asked to calculate the height of a tree without using recursion. Most developers tend to choose recursion when it comes to trees. But using a queue you can easily implement an iterative solution to level order traversal. Most data structures can be categorized as ordered versus unordered collection. For example, sets in hash tables are unordered collections. Sets are good for getting rid of duplicates. In Python we call hash tables as dictionaries. Graphs are another interesting data structure where we can use Dijkstra's algorithm to find the shortest path. An interesting problem related to graph is to find critical connections in a network. Here is a food for thought. What data structure is good for comparing adjacent data? Tip number 3 is to know at least one language very well. There are many languages and choosing one to excel in can be difficult to decide. Many interviewers tend to look how well you have the command of the language of your choice. Sometimes the programming language of your choice can also depend on the level of software you use. For example, for low-level software that is close to the hardware one tends to use C, or C++. For application-level software the developers tend to use Java or C++. These days Python is becoming a language of choice for many developers as a secondary language besides knowing their own primary language. Python is an excellent language for interviewing with FAANG companies. FAANG here means Facebook, Amazon, Netflix, and Google. It lets you work at a higher level with many built-in data structures such as hash tables, lists, sets, tuples. So that instead of getting bogged down in low-level implementation of basic data structures, as is the case in C, you focus on the algorithm and the time and space complexity. At the end of the day languages are like girls and everybody have their own preference. For software at the level of operating systems and embedded systems, knowing the assembly language for at least one CPU architecture is also very important. Debugging programs can be a real challenge with any language. Knowing the concepts of object-oriented programming is extremely useful, especially if you write C++ in your resume. Interviewers tend to ask concepts like virtual functions, polymorphism and difference between class variables and instance variables. Tip number 4 is to fall back on the right resources in the time of the need. There are many excellent resources on the web such as LeetCode, HackerRank, and Stack Overflow. Becoming a member of LeetCode is an excellent idea. Try to do at least 100 problems on LeetCode of various kinds, easy, medium and hard before going for the screening interview. Having a warm hand, which means to be involved in problem solving and thinking of algorithms on a day-to-day basis, is very important. The interviewing with FAANG companies can be challenging, and being disoriented or not fully prepared is not a good idea. Think of yourself as an athlete who prepares for the upcoming tournament. If you have been away on a vacation pursuing other hobbies, it is better to tell the recruiters to hold off scheduling interview than to give half-hearted attempts. Most importantly, keep your cool and be confident during the interview. Tell your thought process and speak about how you plan to solve a problem before jumping to the coding right away. Interviewers generally tend to be helpful. So if you get stuck on a problem, they would usually give you hints. Don't get defensive and do not apologize for things you don't know or forgot. Remember, interviewing can be fun and getting to know different companies can be quite exciting. Congratulations, you worked hard to get where you are. But the final and the most important tip is that knowing how machines work is not enough in life. You have to know the mental models of the people you have to work and live with as well. Culture is like human software. If you want to excel once you are inside, it is very important to understand the motivations of the people around. The culture in Silicon Valley is cutthroat. And there are people who will not hesitate to eliminate you from the competition. I am not saying that everybody is evil. But many are, and be on the lookout for them. The world still have some good souls, so there is still hope for humanity. But the good is scarce and evil is plenty. So knowing your surroundings and people around you is extremely important. Technical skills can only take you so far. You do not want to be the guy who is first in school but last in life. Soft skills are also important for success with women. And you need some irrationality after so much rationality in your coding and algorithms.